Congressman Fulcher, how are you?
You know what? I'm doing really well, and I have to tell you that since the last election, I'm doing even better. We have a much better environment for trying to do policy in Washington, D.C., in my opinion.
So it feels like we're getting things done now, right?
Well, there's a lot of activity, and honestly, it's just generally a better attitude. And I say that across the board. And we needed some change, and we're getting a lot of change. Whether you agree with all of it or not, that's one thing. But we're getting a lot of change, and frankly, I think it's time for most of it to take place.
Oh, great, great. And I know our big topic of conversation is your meeting you had recently with Bureau of Land Management. It's about wildfires.
That's right. Last year, we burned, when I say we, the state of Idaho had right at 1 million acres of wildfire that tragically went up in smoke all over the state. And it's not unusual to have big fires, but last year was just worse than normal. And it's still to be seen what's happened to all of the environment, the deer herds, the elk herds. We don't know for sure. Even the private cattle ranchers and their losses, we're not totally sure of all that. But this was just a devastating year. And I could see the writing on the wall and can see it moving forward. From my vantage point on the Natural Resource Committee in Congress, I can see that the Forest Service in Idaho and the Department of Interior have about $1 billion in what's called deferred maintenance. And that is projects and things that have been approved they need to do, but they don't have the resources to do it. And so that tells me that they're overwhelmed and that we need to do something different if we're going to avoid one of those years where we burn up another 1 million acres. And so the objective was to pull the stakeholders together. So we got Forest Service, the Department of Interior, we got the Idaho Department of Lands, we got local loggers, we got county commissioners, we had everybody that typically engaged local municipal fire departments, all at the same place at the same time, and just put everything out on the table. And I think it was a very good exercise.
Okay, great. Now this comes against the backdrop of the California wildfires and what was happening there, and then you bring up deferred maintenance. Does Idaho have a different wildfire plan than maintenance plan than California as far as cutting down brush
Well, we
maintenance?
we do, but the root of the problem is the same. In California, they didn't properly plan for the water they needed, and that's been an ongoing issue there for some time. And so when they needed it, they simply didn't have the resources to fight it or suppress it. In Idaho, it's all about fuel load. We've got 33 million acres of federal land in the state, and when these wildfires hit, inadvertently, usually due to lightning strikes, it's mostly on federal land. That's the way it was this year, and it's not managed. It's just and to be fair, the Forest Service, Interior, they don't have the resources to do this. That's the deferred maintenance problem we were talking about. And so what that tells me is it's an all hands on deck situation if we're going to prevent this in the future. But there's some fiefdoms that are out there. The federal entities don't like to work with state and local sometimes, and vice versa, right? It's a two-way street. But part of my motive was just to bring everybody together, have them look left and right at the table and say, you know what? We need each other if we're going to prevent this from happening again. And we need to put our pride aside. And if there are regulatory issues, I need to know what they are so I can try to deal with that from a statutory standpoint. So I do think we made some progress. If nothing else, there was some rapport that was kind of built and shared, some faces that were attached to a name and an entity that, it just helps when you are in the middle of a crisis, and this wildfire situation is a crisis. And I think we made a little bit of progress there, but we've got a long way to go yet.
Sure. So do you think you'll be holding, excuse me, meetings in the future before the wildfire season gets here?
Yeah, we will probably do it again in a different geographic region because as the Forest Service is managed, they have different regions. It doesn't necessarily adhere to state boundaries, nor should it. But Panhandle, for example, has got a different management core that oversees that. And so we'll want to do that probably in some different geographies just because the state is so big. But the bottom line that I just need to drive home here is we need to understand that our federal partners, in this case, they really are overwhelmed, and there's a tremendous amount of resources, and they simply don't have the capacity to manage all of it. And there's some other things wrong with the system. I mean, lawsuits get filed inevitably every time there's a timber project that slows things down or even shuts it off. Same thing with grazing. So there's some legal issues that need to be addressed. There's some regulatory ones in terms of policy. But right now, we just have a lose-lose situation because we burn up millions of dollars worth of timber in a given year, and then we spend millions of dollars to try to suppress the fires that are the result of that fuel load, and then we emit tremendous amounts of carbon up into the atmosphere and damage the environment. So if we're going to change things, then we have to be smarter, do more with less, and leverage everyone's resources to our mutual advantage.
Now, are you saying one of the reasons our federal partners are overwhelmed are lawsuits?
Yeah, because because they will successfully bid out a timber project, for example, and then some entity, oftentimes out of state, will file a lawsuit over it and slow things down or even stop it. And so that just cobs up that deferred maintenance backlog. So whatever project just got bid out now remains dormant. Fuel load continues to build. A lightning strike hits, and it's just tinder up in the smoke in no time. And so, yes, that is part of the problem.
All right. Now, with the new administration in office, do you think Idaho is in a better position as far as getting this deferred maintenance knocked out?
I think so, and at least in part, and this is for selfish reasons, but it gives people like me and the rest of the federal delegation from Idaho access. I have to tell you, the last 4 years, I didn't have one meeting with Joe Biden. I couldn't get a meeting with the president, and nobody could. He just didn't do that type of thing. The Speaker of the House couldn't get a meeting with the President of the United States. Well, this cycle already, I've had one meeting that was 2.5 hours with President Trump right up front with a very small group. There were 10 or 12 of us, and we talked about everything, including this. And so just simply having the access and the encouragement from the President of the United States to his agencies within the executive branch, and that's where the Forest Service and Interior are, is underneath the executive branch, the encouragement from him to work with us and to respond and engage. And so that's part of my responsibility, is to engage with the department heads and the new cabinet members over Interior and Forest Service, which is the Department of Ag. But we've got a president now that is encouraging that activity and that interaction and that cooperation to take place. That's got to help.
Yeah. So, of course, you feel like now you're being allowed to do your job and get.
That's right. And that's very true. And, for the last 4 years, it just seems like we've been playing defense on policies that we don't agree with, that quite honestly are not in the interest of Idaho. And now that effort can go towards doing positive things like maybe preventing another year where we burn 1 million acres of federal land in our state. So I'm encouraged. I think most people in Washington, D.C. are encouraged, and we're off to a positive start, and I think a good change in direction for our country.
Okay, fantastic. Uh, that's great about the wildfires and the update, and you're getting the ball rolling on that. That you're not wasting any time, obviously, getting that done. Can we talk about a couple of things that pertain to Idaho with the new administration? Can we talk
Sure,
about can we talk about tariffs? What are your
sure.
feelings as far as what's happened over the weekend? I did talk to the Idaho Potato Commission this morning. Potatoes are not on Canada's first round of things are going to slap a tariff on. But where do you see us going in general? Just the big picture.
Yeah, so I actually had a chance to talk to the president about that, and he shared his position and his rationale with us in that 2.5 hour meeting that I was referring to earlier. And his strategy is twofold. One, of course, is on the commerce front. We have a large trade imbalance with most of our trading partners. And in many cases, they're hesitant to accept or import American goods, but they're very aggressive in trying to export their own goods. And so he wants to change that balance. And I understand that. American suppliers, American producers need to be on a level playing field, and they're not. The other thing that is an issue to them, and this is why you hear conversations about not just tariffs, but Panama Canal, Greenland, whatnot, is homeland security. We've got adversaries that are in very strong positions that honestly, we don't want to just be their checkbook. We don't want to be only buying their products, not selling products, and funding their aggression in many ways. So that's the president's position. I generally agree with that. And I think that we need to give these a little bit of time. Already, I think there's been some progress made. We're getting the attention of some of our neighbors and some of our adversaries, and they need to put some attention on this.
All right. Are you, well, I wouldn't, happy isn't the word, but do you think it's correct that President Trump is handling the tariffs almost first thing, that and illegal immigration?
Yes, because it's going to take a little while. So I agree with what the president is doing. And we've seen for some time that some of our adversaries who tend to ship us the most, sell us the most, and I'll use China as a prime example, they've got other issues. They don't compete fairly. They have a tendency to steal technology. They have a tendency to use slave labor, and they have a tendency to be very poor environmental stewards when they produce things. And you know what? That's just not right. And so I think with us as their primary consumer, we need to be able to exercise a little bit of our own leverage and say, wait a minute, this isn't right. You need to change your behavior. If you want us to be buying all your stuff, then we have some requirements, and you need to abide by those.
Okay. One more question. We have Mexico turning things around over the weekend as far as tariffs. I got a release from the White House this morning. President Trump says that Mexico's president is going to be sending 10,000 troops to our southern border to prevent, illegal crossings, this sort of thing. Uh, do you think it's going to go well with Mexico? Do you think we can turn this around? Because this is a very different situation than what we've been dealing with the last 4 years at the border. This is a whole new ball game, technically.
Well, it is. And part of the reason for that is Mexico is not entirely in control. The cartels have become so strong and so powerful and so well armed that oftentimes they are the ones that are running the show. It's not the government in Mexico. So there's another factor there, and that's why you saw the president declare them as terrorists, because well, frankly, they are, and they're very well equipped. They're very dangerous. But in the case of Mexico, that is the place where much of the illegal drugs come from. That's where the fentanyl comes from. That's where we have, so many deaths in America and in Idaho, by the way. We are not immune to that. And so he had to do something to get their attention so that at least with the resources they have, as in the government of Mexico, puts some things in place to try to restrict this. We can't do all of it on our own. You're going to find that there will be actions taken against cartels. You're going to find there'll probably be further tariffs if there's not a behavioral change. But this, in terms of Mexico, there's not just the United States and Mexico negotiating here. There's a third party. It's the cartels. They're very powerful. They need to be stopped, and we've got to start taking the unpleasant task of stopping them. And by the way, if anyone has a problem with these policies, look no further than the Biden administration for being the cause of that. We've had an open border for 4 years. We've got 15 to 20 million people. We think that we have no idea who they are. And a lot of them, I'm sure, are great people. There's a lot of them who are not. But we don't have any idea for sure who are the good, who are the bad. So now we've got to go through the cleanup process. And that's our number one responsibility of the federal government, is to protect our citizens. And we have not done that for 4 years. So now we're going to have a very unpleasant process of trying to right that ship.
So it's not going to be an overnight fix, is what you're saying, with the last 4
No, and
years.
it'll be very emotional, and there'll be a lot of legitimate pleas of people that don't want to be deported and all those types of things, and and other governments that don't want to be tariffed and those types of things. But we just have to remember, look, our first and foremost responsibility is protecting Americans. And unfortunately, we've been put in a very bad position now, and we've been put at a disadvantage because of the policy of the last 4 years. So it'll be painful and it'll be emotional to do that, but it needs to be done. And so I support the president with his policies, and will do anything I can to help him.
Okay, fantastic. One more question. What you're working on the wildfires for Idaho, so thank you for that. What other big projects or even little projects will be helpful to Idaho with the new administration that you would like to see roll out in the next few months?
I'm so glad you asked. I've got the KEEP Act, keep each and every penny. It's an effort to try to eliminate federal income tax on overtime pay. And the president has been receptive to that. We are hoping that he includes that with the no tax on tips as part of the reconciliation package. I'm working on that now, but that's my bill. That's my legislation. Idea behind it is to reward work, especially in this post-COVID world for so long where we did not reward work. And what we want to do is allow people to keep more of what they earn and encourage that work. And, if people have more money, specifically the money they earn, they're going to spend it, they're going to invest it, and they're going to do it more efficiently than some government program. And so that's the idea behind this. It does not impact payroll taxes. So the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, none of that is touched. It's just simply the federal income tax on overtime pay. I think we've got a shot at it, and I'm working hard to try to make that happen.